Hello friends, I am finally back with another video. It has been a struggle to film lately because we have so many renovations going on in the house. Just so many things have been going on and happening that is taking me a while to actually sit down and film, and I'm finally in this space because today I will be putting everything back into the bathroom. My room will probably be next to get renovated, so I don't even know if I'm going to be able to film a May wrap up and videos for June or how that will happen. So we're going to get into the wrap up now. I will stop rambling. So yeah, we should probably get into the video. First book that I read in April has gotten a lot of hype in 2018. A lot of people had it on their favorites list. So I read Circe by Madeline Miller. I was so apprehensive going into this book because it's a story about witchcraft, and usually I'm not a person that reads fantasy, witchcraft, like it's just not my thing. But what made me pick this up was because the main character is a nymph slash titan, so it's based in Greek mythology, so that's why I picked it up. I will read like mythology stories, but I just won't read fantasy stories. They're sort of similar, but then sort of not, so I kind of enjoyed this. I had a good time reading it, but I think it dragged in quite a few places. Like the middle was just kind of boring, but I liked seeing different people throughout Greek history, like, you know, Homer and the Odyssey and that sort of stuff, and then some of the other gods and goddesses and titans and all that sort of stuff. One thing I will say about this is that I really loved the writing of this book, and I loved that it was like pretty beautiful and just very nice writing. Main character Circe, she does do a lot of terrible things, but in comparison to other gods and titans and stuff, like, is it really that bad? I mean, Zeus is going around screwing everyone. But yeah, a lot of people are kind of divided on whether or not Circe is like a feminist character or if she's just a really terrible person. To be honest, I don't know. I liked her character. I mean, at times I hated her, and at other times I really liked her. I really loved the setting on the island. Like, that was my favorite part. I loved her lioness and her turning men into pigs. I think that's iconic. But yeah, I did enjoy myself reading this one. I kind of don't understand the hype around this one because it's an okay story. I felt like I went into the story expecting to get something profound out of it or meaningful, and I didn't. It was just a story of a nymph that was banished to an island for doing bad things, and she meets many characters in Greek mythology. That's pretty much it. I mean, in the end, she does kind of redeem herself. I think I rated this a 3-star. Like, it was okay. It wasn't my favorite. But yeah, I am interested in reading Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I had my eye on that book for years, so I have that on ebook, and I will hopefully be reading that at some point. I'm aiming for like August or July to read that. So the next book I read was an ebook. This is Perfect Remains by Helen Feilds. This is a police procedural detective story. Basically, this here detective from France gets kicked out of his detective agency in France and gets sent to like Scotland Yard and whatnot, and he basically becomes the chief detective there, and yeah, a bunch of gruesome murders take place. Basically, women who are very high profile and great at their jobs but also very lonely and don't really have any friends or don't really spend too much time at home are basically kidnapped, and it's made to look like they are murdered, which they aren't. That's not really a spoiler. And yeah, they're just abducted by this guy called King, and he's basically kept them in his basement and abuses them. It's a really dark story, but it was quite enjoyable. I always feel weird saying that a dark story like this is enjoyable, but it was good. Basically, the overall plot and pace of the story was really good. I really liked the overall switching perspectives from, you know, the kidnapper slash serial killer to the detective. The main detective in the story, I think you pronounce his name as Callahan, I don't know. I really don't know how I feel about his character. His character kind of sexualizes other female characters, so I really didn't like his character, but I loved his partner, Detective Ava Turner. I really loved her character. She was such a strong female character, and I wish that she was the main character in this story and not the male detective, because I think she's a lot better. I like her character a lot more. I will be continuing with this series because I do love the overall story. I think overall I rated this 4 stars, so I mean, I really did enjoy it. There are a lot of graphic scenes in this book of women abuse, so if you can't stomach that, then like don't read this book, because there are some pretty graphic scenes. I did enjoy it, and I will be, well, I tried to read the second book in the series this month. I was going to, but then that's when my reading slump hit, and I wasn't in the mood for thrillers, and you'll see why in a minute. So the next book I read this month, and it's a favorite. This is probably going to be one of my favorite books of the year because I love it so darn much. I read The Water Cure by Sophie Mackintosh. 3 sisters are on this here kind of island. They're raised by their mother and a man called King, I believe. It's a dystopian society. Men and women are kind of separated. Women fear men. Men are presumed to be inherently bad, and women genuinely fear for their lives. The environment's completely wrecked. Women come to this island to do these therapies to cure themselves of traumas at the expense of a man. So yeah, it's a weird dystopian feminist book, but there's an underlying mystery with 2 murders taking place and some really other weird stuff and just a toxic kind of romance. I really loved this book. First of all, I mean, the cover is gorgeous. This is like my favorite cover of all time. The writing of this story was so lyrical and beautiful, and oh my god, I loved the writing of this book. There's such an atmospheric feel to this book as well. It's so sinister and just kind of creepy and eerie, and I really love that. There are a lot of underlying themes in this book about, you know, rape culture, sexual and physical abuse, social conditioning, and definitely cult-like behaviors. There's like a lot going on in this book, but it's also very simplistic. I just really enjoyed this book, and I really enjoyed the bond that the 3 sisters had, and the overall story and just the writing is gorgeous, and I urge you all to read it because it's one fine novel. Also, this book was a part of I read 4 books in 1 week, so I have that video up, so I'll put it in the link below. I really just wanted to talk about this again, but the next 3 I will just kind of skim over because I've already told you my thoughts on these. So the next one we have is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. Basically, a woman wakes up, well, doesn't really wake up in a coma. She is in a coma, but she's like, she can hear everything, but she can't open her eyes kind of thing, and she doesn't know how she got there, and she has to kind of figure out how she got there. There's something going on with her husband and her sister. So yeah, this is a psychological thriller. and I felt this was so average. There's also a lot of tropes in this, oh my god. So basically the main character, she has, you know, mental illnesses, she has an alcoholic problem. I feel that is so mainstream now for psychological thrillers, for the main female character to be an alcoholic and have some sort of mental health issues or family drama or something like that. And it's really freaking annoying. I'm getting real sick of it. You spend like 2/3 of this novel going through Amber's boring work life, and it's not until literally the last 50 to 70 pages that you actually get to the good stuff and to the actual mystery and actually figure out what's happening. The only thing that saved me from not DNFing this book were the diary entries that happen along the way, and it's told from her perspective as a child. In the end, I didn't really like the main character. I didn't like her sister. There was too many tropes going on, and there were a few twists and turns, but by the time we came to that, I figured most of them out, so they weren't surprising, which is annoying. And yeah, so this was a 2.5 star for me. The next book I read was Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. It was my first Agatha Christie novel. Basically, in a nutshell, Hercule Poirot is an absolute pompous a-hole, and I cannot stand him. He just came up with conclusions out of his ass. It was really annoying. Like, where the heck are you getting your information? You're stuck on a train, you can't telegraph anybody or whatever. It was just really annoying and frustrating, and he made everyone else around him feel stupid because they couldn't come up with the conclusions that he had come up with. So, really didn't like that about him. I do want to read Death on the Nile, but just to see if I can put up with this character. So once again, my camera turned off on me. So, Murder on the Orient Express. I think in the end I ended up giving this book a... what was it? I think like a 2-star. I really didn't like it. The movie was better. So the next book I read was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline, and I ended up really loving this book. I really love the science fiction aspect. I really love most of the characters. But I will say that the book is vastly different from the movie. The plot lines are just like completely different in some parts and where the story goes. So yeah, I really love this, and I wish that I could have read this as a child because I would have loved it. So yeah, I think I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. And the next book I read was an ebook. I read Once We Were Brothers by Ronald H. Balson. This is a World War II story set in Poland. It's like alternating storylines and timelines or whatever. Ben Solomon accuses this very high profile Chicago philanthropist, I can't pronounce the words today, excuse me, but it basically accuses this very prominent rich millionaire who was a Auschwitz camp survivor, and he accuses him as being Otto Pitek, a Nazi SS officer, otherwise known as the Butcher of Smolensk. I don't know how to pronounce the name. And then Liam Taggart and Catherine Lockhart try to figure out if this guy actually is a Nazi, while Ben tells his story from way back in World War II Poland. And that's where, you know, the alternating stories happen, and oh my god, this is just so heart-wrenching. This book just draws you in, and you become addicted, and you become heartbroken. I really loved all the characters, obviously except the Nazi. And you know, again, what I love about Ronald H. Balson's books is that he researches what he's writing so well. So when you read them, it feels so real, and you feel like you're reading an actual survivor account instead of a fiction book, which I love. If you love historical fiction, especially World War II historical fiction, I recommend to read any of Ronald H. Balson's books. They're so good. This was like my second favorite book this month. This was a 5-star read for me, so yeah. And this book is, I'm crediting this book for putting me in a reading slump, and I just don't know what I want to read this month. I have a few ideas, which you'll see in my May TBR, but it's just honestly all over the place. I feel I really want to read historical fiction, but I don't know what one I want to read because I don't want my heart broken again. Okay, the next book I read is One of Us is Lying by Karen and McMannis. This was such a hyped up YA. So basically, you probably all know what happens in this book. This kid is murdered by, I guess, peanut oil because he has an allergic reaction to it, and these 4 students are framed. They're all hiding some sort of secret. This guy has a gossip site. He was gonna post those secrets. So yeah, it's a very teenage drama-y kind of, but it was very average. I figured out within the first few chapters who actually did it, which if you read this book, you know. I did like the characters, like some of the characters are likable. I mean, obviously it's YA, so there's a corrupt ton of stereotypes in here. The middle of the story gets super, super boring, and I kind of struggled to go through with it, but I wanted to know what was going to happen. The romance in this between Bronwyn and Nate is super cute, so that's pretty much the only thing that kept my interest. And you guys know I'm not a huge fan of romance. The ending, some of the characters that were involved in the murder were a bit surprising. I had my suspicions, but yeah, how that played out in the end, I think it was a pretty strong ending. Overall, story kept me engaged and it was enjoyable, so it's probably like a 3.5-star / a 3-star. Probably more of a 3-star now that, you know, I've taken some time away from it. Like, it wasn't anything spectacular. It wasn't anything amazing. It was just a good, enjoyable kind of, I would classify this as like a trashy YA kind of read. Not exactly too trashy, but like, it's almost in that category. In total, I've read 9 books. Or is it 8? No, I read 8 books. I can't count. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and check me out on all my social medias. The links will be in the description below, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye!